Now, back in St. Louis, at some point I was asked to collaborate with the city group at HOK. I gave a presentation about that charrette I told you for the Gateway Mall, sort of connecting the disconnected parts, how to connect the downtown to the river and capitalize on those millions of people that came every year. And there wasn't anything at that time on the drawing board that addressed that. They were just thinking about the riverfront, but the importance of actually connecting it to downtown. So with this in mind, I was asked to give a presentation at HOK, which actually led to more meetings with the city group and actually talking about well, how do we translate my research to what HOK has been doing, maybe writing a brochure. The last of it, we finally came that there was no client, but within the marketing department, it was suggested from the city group to come up translating this whole idea of the creative economy and strategies of revitalizations, the kind of things I've been writing about, to North St. Louis. So this is the Arch Ground, just very quickly to give you a sense of how these things translate again in three-dimensional form. If this is the Gateway Mall, this is the area that I actually decided to work on. Most of you are hopefully familiar that there is going to be a new bridge. So I thought that would be an interesting addition and something that one could also celebrate and capitalize on. This is the final master plan. I'm not going to discuss this. I mean, this isn't about the architecture, but it's more about collaboration and creating consortium between various anchor institutions and doing that spatially. Up until then, this is the edge of the Arch Ground. Up until then, what had happened was, if I'm not mistaken, there had been two big master plans for North St. Louis that was mostly about, at its core, about high-end housing proposals. And there were, of course, other aspects to it, but understandably, a lot of these investors wouldn't just invest because North St. Louis is one of the most high-crime areas in the country. So, you can't blame that people were kind of hesitant at the end of the day to put their money, to invest their money in it. So I just, there was also two independent architectural students, urban design students working at HOK. We just kind of went over the exercise, and the final product was, instead of putting high-end housing, why not? And this is more normal for European cities, but why not try to suggest that making the renewable energy a new department between all the universities that's about innovation. I'll just show you. So in the final strategy, this area, obviously, it's all, there's a huge problem. Nobody can actually enjoy the river because of all sorts of problems with the streams, and to actually have a lake, and around the lake you would address the topic of clean water. So you would have these centers of renewable energy and clean water, but also showcasing the whole process and getting the school kids to come. Also, new media. New media, I'm referring to the task of creating an environment that invites people who are graduates from new media to actually take part, to stay, to create an environment that would make them want to stay. And computer games is a good example of what is new media. I mean, it usually is something between the IT and graphic designers and people who are very creative. But there are no indicators that actually measure the role of that creative. If you had just the IT people, you would never get the games. So, you know, there are all these new types of indicators that are helpful for policymakers, for decision makers to see that creativity isn't just about, you know, creating fun and consumption, but actually it's at the core of innovation. Needless to say, again, back to how do we create spaces that actually promote that. So it really became a place about renewable energy, promoting new media, and sort of spaces that addresses innovation for children, the visitors that came to the Gateway Mall. And then, most importantly, the university would be the key anchor institution that would invest in these brownfields that are very cheap, but actually prime land as far as St. Louis is concerned. I did a series of 10-minute walks, and this whole area is closer to downtown and of more strategic importance to people who are visitors than, say, Soulard or you know, Clayton. So really, this would be a good investment by all means, by any means for any universities, but also creating sort of affordable housing. There has never been enough, and it's affordable housing development. So what is interesting about this type of approach is that instead of North St. Louis, you actually end up with the kind of people that will be using this area is academics, students, artists, new media and innovation people. So in a way, they are not the type of people who would get intimidated, but rather empower North St. Louis. And North St. Louis could benefit from a community that they could share libraries with, playgrounds with. So kind of totally thinking about these spaces in a different way. Well, I won't go into why it's designed the way that it's designed. But I hope this, this is a sort of a library, so once you had the new highway, sorry, the new bridge, you would celebrate the city entrance with a new building that was a state-of-the-art building, and hopefully a lot of new media stuff, and water was a key element. Am I going the right way? Oh yeah, here, this was again to make the street into some sort of exhibition space where you have actually the artists and new media people to be able to use the facade. So it's always the challenge of how get people interested to come out to places where they wouldn't normally go, and you know, to lure them, to seduce them to want to be using spaces that they would normally not use. Also in Eastern Europe, a lot of these beautiful old factories have been made into community centers and concert halls. And on the riverfront, I mean, there is a, yeah, this is helpful. I mean, right now we have a wall that totally disconnects the river from a flood wall disconnects it from the river. So it was more about opening it up with another lake so people could actually use this at leisure, what cannot be done here right now. And just creating playgrounds, tennis grounds. There's no such thing in downtown, but I think I'm missing a slide here. With that type of approach, you also promote diversity. People from different countries come, new students come, etc. So after I finished that project, very soon afterwards, it became clear to ever make such a thing happen, you had to make many anchor institutions to start collaborating. This is a work for 2-3 generations. It just doesn't happen. I don't know how many people are familiar with the Shoto Lake project in downtown, which is by Richard Barron, Malcolm Salazar's group, which is sort of putting the lakes back in the downtown, and even they haven't managed to get that federal grant funding. So I guess in my naive world, I just realized, well, there's no way this can happen. We can start something, but this isn't going to happen. So the question really was, well, maybe it doesn't need to be that big. Maybe to create spaces that promote creativity, hence vis-a-vis innovation, maybe we can do this in a smaller way. So it was a look at the city again and sort of its the variables, and it became clear that the two main pillars of economic strategy have been Monsanto and Vortex. I hope everybody is aware of this. Is there any? Does this make sense? Vortex is more for the IT and Monsanto for biochemical. But the third leg that was missing was actually investing in the creative sector for the purpose of economic development. So I guess that big master plan for kind of creating a space that is about renewable energy, is about interdisciplinary spaces where paths cross and interesting, and left brain, right brain people are next to each other, you actually end up, I realized that we realized we're not having this, anything much done about the third pillar, which is keeping the creative people in St. Louis. I think I showed you a slide who the creative sector is, just going over it again. It's the creative sector, we're talking about architecture, new media people, sculptors, TV, radio, renewable energy, IP lawyers, intellectual property lawyers, fashion designers, graphic designers. So it's kind of the whole industrial, the industrial designers. But then you need to spice that up with IT people, with biochemists, so magic happens. So all you can do is provide, create opportunities and sort of connect the dots. And
can we ask a couple of questions?
Absolutely.
When I listen to you, a couple of things just seem to be missing from the analysis. First of all, we have clusters of scientists and engineers doing very substantial amounts of research and development. Monsanto is an excellent example.
Yes.
So is Boeing, earlier McDonnell Douglas, and a lot of supporting companies, subcontractors and all that. That typically tends to be out in what we call the county, the suburban ring around the central city. So in a sense, we start off with a major cluster of creative people, scientists, engineers, out in the county, and you're bypassing them.
No.
Well, I don't see how you're incorporating them. There are not perhaps by California standards, but by central Midwestern standards, we've got quite an array of scientists and engineers in this metropolitan area. And I don't see them, maybe I've missed it, but I don't see them in your design.
Well, it was, Vortex and Monsanto, they're already strongly existing institutions, and they're doing great work. There is no need to help them work better, but I think the purpose of this presentation is what else should we concentrate on that has been underutilized, underinvested in. And I think the argument here is that keeping talent here and promoting this third sector, which is in global economy a great contributor, first of all to innovation, not only to innovation but also to the GDP of any city, region. So it's really addressing that. It's not actually, it's by not on what's the road? Not King's King's Highway. You have the Vortex. So there are a lot of incubators that support research and startups for what you're addressing, but there's hardly anything out there to take care of that third leg, important leg of economy here locally.
Well, a lot of it comes back to living conditions. Monsanto is located out in the county because that's where their employees live. They have 200 acres of barely used real estate out in Chesterfield
Right.
that they just reacquired. It's a 45-minute drive from the county into that near north area you're talking about. And the traffic is terrible at rush hours. I go there to build houses for Habitat for Humanity. And you won't get Monsanto's employees to live in that area. And mass transit is abysmal in that region. You need a several decades-long cultural change in that area to make it attractive for creative, high-salary type people to live there. Every week, there's a murder within 5 or 6 blocks of that area. We make sure we get our people out by 3 o'clock in the afternoon so that we don't run into neighborhood wildness. It's a diverse, mixed area, one of the best areas in the city for diversity. But that still doesn't attract much in the way of new construction, new people living in.
It wasn't intended to actually connect necessarily directly to Monsanto. It's actually more about creating or a third focus. I wasn't my intention to suggest, because those, you know, those organs are running, they're doing their job, and they're successful, as you addressed quite rightly. But there is a missing link, and or let's say totally underutilized. If we look at, you know, between all the universities in St. Louis, how much is being done to to give an opportunity to the graduates to stay. From these sectors, there isn't much out there.
Well,
and we have
parts of the university are already heavily committed in the area around Forest Parkway. They're in a consortium for biotechnology expansion. That's what, 20 square blocks or something. But, they have rights to where construction will go on. I can't see them moving 2 or 3 miles north to set up another remote structure. The value of the closeness to the university is a significant benefit.
Yeah.